In the nascent years of the digital age, a new frontier was unfolding. A promise of connection, of limitless information, of a world suddenly within reach. But beneath that gleaming surface lurked a darkness. A vulnerability no one had truly anticipated. Corporations poured billions into securing their digital fortresses, believing their data, their secrets, their very identity was protected. They were wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. Because in this brave new world, a new breed of predator emerged. A phantom. A specter. An adversary who could breach the most formidable defenses not with brute force, but with cunning, with manipulation, with an almost supernatural intuition for human weakness. He was a whisper in the wires. A shadow flitting through the circuits. And he would become a legend, a terrifying symbol of the unseen dangers that lurked in the very heart of our interconnected existence. This was the dawn of digital fear, and the age of the ghost in the machine. His name was Kevin Mitnick. But to the terrified executives, the baffled law enforcement, the entire burgeoning tech industry, he was simply the hacker star. Not hacker. Hacker. He didn't just break into systems, he seemed to melt through firewalls, slip past security protocols, and disappear without a trace. From the deepest vaults of corporate America to the sensitive networks of government agencies, his digital fingerprints were everywhere, yet nowhere. He wasn't after money, not primarily. His motivation was far more insidious, the thrill of the chase. The intellectual conquest. The sheer power of knowing he could circumvent any barrier. He wasn't just stealing data, he was stealing secret star. Access codes, proprietary software, unreleased prototypes, the very blueprints of our future were vulnerable to his invisible touch. His methods were elegant, almost artistic. A master of social engineering, he could charm his way into the most secure systems with nothing but a phone call and a carefully crafted lie. He played people like instruments, orchestrating a symphony of deceit that left a trail of ruined careers and shattered trust in its wake. His presence felt omniscient, his reach boundless. He was everywhere, yet nowhere. And the fear he inspired was palpable. This wasn't just a criminal. This was a *4 star. A digital enigma that defied conventional understanding. Law enforcement hunted him, relentlessly. The FBI, the Secret Service, they pooled resources, dedicated countless hours, launched elaborate sting operations. But he was a specter. He would materialize, cause absolute havoc, then vanish again into the ether, leaving behind only the chilling echo of his presence. Each successful hack was a taunt. Each evaded capture, a deepening humiliation for the authorities sworn to protect. He was the ultimate digital escape artist, a shapeshifter in the data streams. The sheer audacity of his exploits, the scale of his penetration, it sent shockwaves through the world. It forced us to confront a terrifying truth: the digital age had given birth to an entirely new kind of threat. An unseen enemy. A legend. And as the hunt intensified, the question loomed large: how do you catch a ghost, when the ghost has mastered the machine itself? How do you capture an adversary who seems to exist only in the shadows of the internet? The ghost in the machine was real. And the world would soon discover the true cost of letting him run free. In the suburban sprawl of Los Angeles, a young Kevin Mitnick found himself adrift. A restless spirit, often feeling out of place, he craved connection, yet also control. His world, a tapestry of ordinary routines, seemed to hold little excitement. But beneath the hum of everyday life, a hidden universe pulsed with electrifying potential: the telephone network. This wasn't just a device for simple conversations. For Kevin, it was a sprawling, enigmatic labyrinth. A digital bloodstream flowing across continents, carrying whispers and secrets, all controlled by unseen switches and unfathomable codes. He saw it not as a tool, but as a challenge. A monumental puzzle, waiting to be unraveled. His first fascination was innocent enough, a boy's natural curiosity about how things worked. How did a simple dial tone connect you to anyone, anywhere? But that innocent spark, that nascent interest, would soon ignite a fire. A ravenous hunger for understanding, yes, but also for something far more intoxicating, power. This hunger led him into the clandestine world of phone phreaking. A shadowy subculture, born from rebellion and technological ingenuity, where adolescents, and a few rogue adults, treated the vast telephone infrastructure as their personal playground. They weren't just making calls. They were listening. They were exploring. They were manipulating. Armed with self-made devices, crude, blue boxes that mimicked operator tones, red boxes that spoofed coin deposits, they could trick the network. They could make free calls across the globe. They could eavesdrop on the conversations of high-ranking officials, simply by knowing the right frequency, the precise *beep* or *boop* to send down the line. For Kevin, this wasn't just about avoiding a phone bill, it was a revelation. A sense of mastery. He devoured every piece of knowledge he could find, trading secrets with fellow phreaks, learning the arcane language of switches, trunks, and central offices. He wasn't just a user anymore. He was becoming a maestro of the system. He was a phantom, weaving through the wires, unseen. Unheard. What began as an intellectual pursuit, a thrilling game of cat and mouse with anonymous engineers, rapidly morphed into something darker. The allure of access became an obsession. Every successful intrusion, every bypass security measure, every moment spent undetected within the vast digital bloodstream of the phone company, delivered a powerful, exhilarating rush. It wasn't merely about curiosity anymore. It was about control. The ability to listen in on anyone star. To reroute calls. To disrupt services, or simply to prove he could. He learned that simply by mimicking tones, by understanding the system's vulnerabilities, he could wield immense, invisible power. He could make the impossible possible, all from the privacy of his own bedroom. This wasn't just a hobby, it was a burgeoning addiction. An insatiable drive to push boundaries, to test limits, to see what lay beyond the authorized. With each successful bypass, each undetected intrusion, the line between innocent exploration and outright trespass blurred further. The dial tone, once a symbol of connection, became the siren song of unauthorized access. And in the echo of those dark arts, Kevin Mitnick was forging his path, a path that would lead him from the quiet solitude of his room to the very center of a national manhunt. He was learning to be a ghost in the machine. And the machine, well, it was starting to hum a very different tune. The digital world, in its nascent, thrilling infancy, was a labyrinth of unseen connections, a tempting frontier for the insatiably curious mind. For Kevin Mitnick, merely observing was never enough. His early forays, once driven by pure, unadulterated curiosity, began to shift. The flickering green cursor on his screen beckoned him deeper, past the polite invitations, past the digital fences designed to keep outsiders out. He craved more than just a peek. He yearned to understand the architecture of power. He sought the keys to the kingdom itself. It began subtly enough, a challenge, a whisper in the nascent online communities. A target was chosen, a telecommunications giant, a titan whose very infrastructure underpinned the modern world. This wasn't merely about exploring a system, it was about demonstrating control. The thrill wasn't just in finding a vulnerability, but in exploiting it. In that pivotal moment, hovering on the precipice, Kevin wasn't just a kid with a modem. He was an adventurer, a disruptor, preparing to cross a threshold that would forever redefine his path. The air crackled with silent anticipation, the quiet hum of his machine a prelude to an audacious act. He was about to step from observer to intruder. Then, the moment arrived. A sequence of typed commands, a series of carefully crafted exploits, a silent battle waged across invisible wires. The screen flickered. A heartbeat later. Access. He was in. The system, a digital fortress, had yielded. It was like breaking into a vault, not with brute force, but with a whisper, a perfectly placed key. A torrent of data, previously locked away, now lay exposed before him. Directories, files, internal communications, the very pulse of the corporation, unfurled. The adrenaline coursed through him at a high unlike anything he'd ever known. His heart pounded. This wasn't just data on a screen, it was knowledge. It was power. He could see how the gears turned, how the network functioned, where the vulnerabilities lay. The implications were staggering. He had pierced the veil. He had touched the untouchable. And in that electric silence, broken only by the hum of his machine, a profound realization dawned: he wasn't just playing a game anymore. He was actively demonstrating control over someone else's digital domain. He had crossed a boundary. And the taste of that forbidden access, it was intoxicating. Utterly, irrevocably exhilarating. The consequences of that first breach, they were immense, even if not immediately apparent to the world he had just so brazenly invaded. For Kevin, it wasn't just about gaining entry, it was about understanding the vulnerability of the entire system. He had seen the soft underbelly of a seemingly impregnable giant. He hadn't just stolen files, he had stolen a piece of their digital soul, their sense of security. The implications stretched far beyond the data itself. He now understood, with terrifying clarity, the immense leverage he could wield. He could alter records. He could reroute calls. He could manipulate the very fabric of communication. This wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a psychological one. He had proven to himself, unequivocally, that the perceived barriers were merely illusions for those who truly understood their architecture. The line between harmless exploration and malicious exploitation had not just been crossed, it had been erased. And with that eraser stroke, a new chapter in his life, and indeed, in the history of cybersecurity, was irrevocably set. The first breach wasn't just an event, it was a declaration. A promise. And a chilling prelude to the digital storms that lay ahead. The quiet whispers of the phone lines, they were no longer enough. For Kevin Mitnick, the thrill of phreaking had become a mere stepping stone. As his understanding deepened, as his intuition for systems became almost psychic, his targets shifted dramatically. From the humble switchboard, his gaze now fell upon larger, far more formidable fortresses. Universities, with their sprawling research networks, bursting with classified projects and intellectual property. Corporations, guarded by the very first iterations of digital security, eager to protect their trade secrets, their financial futures. And then, the burgeoning, chaotic wilderness of the early internet itself, a vast, interconnected web, ripe for exploration and exploitation. He wasn't just breaking into systems anymore. He was dancing through them. Slipping past digital sentinels. Unlocking gates that were meant to be impenetrable. He was evolving from a mischievous prankster into something far more sophisticated, far more dangerous. The game had changed. The stakes had been raised. And Mitnick, he was ready to play for keeps. His name began to echo in the subterranean chambers of the hacking world. Not in bold print, but in hushed, reverent tones. Kevin Mitnick. The moniker wasn't just a name, it was a legend forming in real time. He was a phantom, an entity whose presence was felt, but never seen. His reputation wasn't built on crude brute force, but on an exquisite artistry of deception and technical brilliance. Social engineering became his canvas, a phone call here, a subtle manipulation there, extracting critical information, gaining trust where none should be given. He could mimic voices. He could conjure convincing scenarios. He could convince you to give him the keys to your kingdom, and you wouldn't even know it until it was too late. He wasn't confined by physical space. He was everywhere. A digital shadow, weaving through fiber optics and telephone wires, leaving no discernible trace. He moved like smoke through firewalls, an invisible architect of disruption, crafting his legend one audacious breach at a time. The underground hailed him. The system hadn't even grasped the scope of his reach. The exhilaration must have been intoxicating. The feeling of absolute, unfettered power, to penetrate the most secure networks with a few keystrokes, to access restricted data, to download proprietary source code, to simply exist within systems he was never meant to touch. It wasn't always about destruction, not initially. Sometimes, it was simply about the challenge. The intellectual high. the proof that he could outsmart the guardians of the digital frontier. But each successful infiltration, each unchallenged breach, hardened his resolve and deepened his imprint. His action sent ripples of paranoia through the nascent digital landscape. A server suddenly offline. A database mysteriously emptied. A network compromised, with no clear culprit. Fear began to manifest, a fear of the unseen, of the unknown. Mitnick was becoming the embodiment of that fear. He was the whispered boogeyman in the machine, a master illusionist performing his greatest acts on the world stage, leaving a trail of questions, and an ever-growing myth. And with every successful foray into the forbidden, the line between digital prowess and outright criminality blurred further into the shadow. In the silent hum of the burgeoning digital world, a new kind of shadow was forming. For years, Kevin Mitnick had moved unseen, a ghost in the machine, leaving only faint, digital footprints. His intrusions, audacious and frequent, were initially dismissed as isolated incidents, the work of disparate, mischievous vandals. But as the 1980s drew to a close, a pattern began to emerge. A signature. A whisper in the wire that was growing undeniably louder. Authorities, often behind the curve in understanding this new frontier, slowly, painstakingly, began to connect the dots. The thrill of the anonymous breach was giving way to the cold, hard reality of consequence, or so they hoped. This wasn't just about breaking into systems anymore, it was about the chilling realization that one individual possessed the uncanny ability to unravel the very fabric of their digital security. The game was no longer theoretical. It was about to become terrifyingly real. The first glimpse of the Phantom, a fleeting, terrifying vision. His early brushes with the law were less a deterrent, and more a masterclass in evasion. The first arrests, often for petty theft or phone phreaking, found a young Mitnick, defiant. Unrepentant. He wasn't scared, he was, in his own mind, educating them on their own shortcomings. He learned from every misstep the police made, every procedural error, every loophole in a legal system ill-equipped to handle the nuances of cybercrime. They caught him, briefly. But each time, he seemed to slip through their fingers, leaving behind a trail of frustrated officers and bewildered prosecutors. These weren't defeats for Kevin Mitnick, they were tutorial star. Each court appearance, each interrogation, became another layer in his armor, honing his skills not just as a hacker, but as a ghost. He was becoming a master of not just digital invisibility, but legal invisibility, a trickster, testing the boundaries, pushing them. And so, the legend began to take shape. The escalating sophistication of his attacks, combined with his uncanny ability to evade capture, eventually drew the attention of a formidable adversary, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI, with its vast resources and relentless pursuit, now had a new, elusive target. This wasn't just a local problem anymore, it was a federal case. A national threat. Mitnick, far from being cowed, seemed to revel in the challenge. The stakes were higher, the chase more exhilarating. He wasn't just breaking into phone switches or university networks, he was now actively engaged in a complex, high-stakes cat-and-mouse game with the highest levels of law enforcement. Every successful hack, every evasion, fueled his defiance, solidifying his belief in his own untouchability. The Phantom had found his thrill. And the hunters, they were only just beginning to realize the magnitude of the shadow they were chasing. A shadow that grew larger with every failed attempt to grasp it.
The call came, a simple, chilling summons, report to his probation officer, but Kevin Mitnick knew. He knew what awaited him. Not a mere reprimand, but a return, a permanent one, to the cold, unforgiving walls of a federal prison. He had violated, he had strayed, and now the net was tightening. In that pivotal moment, staring down the barrel of a life he refused to revisit, Kevin made a choice, a profound, irreversible decision that would forever redefine his existence. He would not surrender. He would not be caught. He would become a ghost. 1 minute, he was just Mitnick, a known entity, albeit a troubled one. The next, he was gone, vanished, erased himself from the grid, shedding identities like a snake sheds its skin. The city lights seemed to mock him, each flicker a watching eye. His phone, a tether to his old life, became a dangerous beacon. He cut it, He packed only essentials. He moved. And with every step away from that life, the stakes escalated. He wasn't just a hacker anymore. He was a fugitive, a high-value target, and the hunt was on. This wasn't some sudden, impulsive flight. This was a calculated, meticulous disappearance. Kevin Mitnick, the master of social engineering, now turned his formidable skills upon his own life. He became a chameleon, blending seamlessly into the backdrop of anonymity. New names, new cities, new faces. Every interaction was a performance, every word a carefully crafted lie. He cultivated aliases with the precision of a surgeon, adopting different mannerisms, even subtle vocal inflections. He rented apartments under false pretenses, always paying in cash. No paper trail, no digital footprint. His world narrowed, shrinking to the space between one payphone call and the next, one rented car and the next, one anonymous motel room and the next. Paranoia became his constant companion. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking figure. Every unfamiliar car, a potential tale. Sleep, when it came, was fitful, haunted by the imagined click of a handcuff, the thunderous knock on a door. He lived on pure adrenaline, a relentless, gnawing fear always just beneath the surface. He was the hunted, and the hunters, the FBI and U.S. Marshals, were relentless. Their faces, projected on most wanted posters across the nation, taunted him from television screens he dared not watch for too long. But even as his physical world became a labyrinth of evasions, Mitnick's digital hunger, his insatiable drive to explore the hidden architectures of the internet, did not diminish. In fact, it intensified. While constantly on the move, a phantom in the physical world, he still sought sanctuary and power in the virtual. From the flickering glow of stolen laptops, hidden in dingy motel rooms or borrowed offices, he would once again plunge into the digital ether. He became a phantom in cyberspace too, bypassing systems, exploiting vulnerabilities, slipping past firewalls with a ghost's touch. Was it pure addiction? A desperate need to feel powerful in a world where he was utterly powerless? Or a defiant scream against the very authorities chasing him? Perhaps all three. He wasn't just hiding, he was operating. Continuing his exploits, pushing the boundaries, proving he was still the best, even with the weight of the federal government on his shoulders. Each successful hack, a silent, audacious challenge thrown directly into the face of his pursuers. He was a digital terrorist, a master criminal, a ghost in the machine, living a double life on the razor's edge. His legend grew, fueled by whispered rumors and sensational headlines. Kevin Mitnick was no longer just a hacker. He was an urban myth, a cautionary tale, a symbol of rebellion, and he was nowhere and everywhere. The digital world held its breath as Kevin Mitnick vanished. He slipped into the labyrinthine depths of the internet, a ghost in the machine, leaving behind a bewildered trail of law enforcement and a stunned tech industry. But this wasn't an escape into obscurity. Oh no. For Mitnick, going dark was merely the prelude to his true ascendancy. This was not a retreat, it was a declaration. From the shadows of his nomadic existence, flitting from anonymous server to stolen modem, he began to orchestrate a symphony of digital intrusions, each one more audacious than the last. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. He was making a mockery of the very systems designed to contain him. This was the reign of the Phantom, a period where his legend solidified, not as a mere hacker, but as an almost mythical cyber ghost, unseen, unheard, yet leaving an undeniable, chilling imprint on the digital landscape. He moved with a chilling grace, his fingers dancing across keyboards, connecting to networks he had no business touching. His targets during this reign of terror? Not just small fry, not mere targets of opportunity. No, Mitnick aimed for the crown jewels. He breached Motorola, plundering their proprietary source code, their most closely guarded secrets, data that could reshape entire industries. The ramifications were immense. Then came Sun Microsystems, a titan, a foundational pillar of the nascent internet. And again, he didn't just break in, he walked through their digital front door, leveraging social engineering with surgical precision, sweet-talking unwitting employees, then exploiting their trust to gain unfettered administrator access. He pilfered vital operating system source code, client lists, and internal documents, a haul that sent shivers down the spine of every CEO. But he was far from finished. Novell, Fujitsu, Nokia, Santa Cruz operation, one after another, these corporate fortresses, believed to be impenetrable, simply melted away. He wasn't merely stealing data, he was demonstrating a fundamental, terrifying failure in their security protocols. He exposed the soft underbelly of corporate America, bypassing firewalls and encryption, not with brute force attacks, but with a cunning intellect, and often just a simple phone call. He was a master of deception, weaving intricate webs of trust and trickery. The sheer audacity of his methods was breathtaking. He wasn't just a threat, he was a living, breathing cyber war. His every move was a defiance, a taunt. The authorities were chasing a phantom, a digital whisper that echoed through servers and telephone lines, yet remained elusive. They would close in, only for him to evaporate, leaving behind a digital footprint that pointed in every direction, yet nowhere at all. He was everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The legend of Kevin Mitnick swelled with each successful intrusion. He became an icon to some, a modern-day digital pirate, a boogeyman to the establishment, but to everyone, he was an undeniable, terrifying force. This was Mitnick at his absolute, unchallenged peak, the undisputed, self-crowned king of the digital underground. He reveled in the chaos, in the sheer satisfaction of outsmarting the best minds and the most advanced systems. But with every daring hack, with every stolen secret, he wasn't just escalating his infamy, he was escalating the stakes. The higher he climbed, the more precarious his perch became. The invisible wires connecting him to the world, the very tools of his power, were also slowly, inexorably, connecting him to his pursuers. Every triumph brought him closer to a reckoning. The reign of the Phantom was glorious, a blaze of infamy, but even phantoms eventually cast a shadow that can be traced. The hunt was intensifying. The world was watching, breathless, and somewhere, someone was beginning to connect the dots, someone who would refuse to let this ghost remain untraceable.
For years, Kevin Mitnick had roamed the digital wilderness, a ghost in the machine, an unseen hand manipulating the wires of the nascent internet. He was the ultimate digital predator, his legend growing with every audacious breach, every system compromised. But even the most elusive shadow casts a light somewhere. And in the sun-drenched, innovation-fueled labs of California, a formidable intellect resided. Tsutomu Shimomura. Not just a brilliant scientist, but a cybersecurity expert of unparalleled caliber. He was a physicist, a hacker, a visionary, a man whose mind moved at the speed of light, his understanding of network vulnerabilities almost prescient. Shimomura wasn't interested in notoriety, he was interested in purity star. In securing the very architecture of the digital world. His work was cutting-edge, his research confidential, his systems, he believed, impenetrable. He was a guardian, a silent protector. His digital domain was his sanctuary. His fortress. Then, the unthinkable. On Christmas Day, 1994, as the world celebrated, Mitnick struck. He didn't just breach a server, he violated Shimomura's inner sanctum. Mitnick had orchestrated an attack so sophisticated, so brazen, it sent shockwaves through the security community. Using IP spoofing and session hijacking, he infiltrated Shimomura's personal workstation at the San Diego Supercomputer Center. He didn't just steal files. He stole tool star. Cutting-edge encryption software. Private research. Even the source code for a new digital phone. This wasn't a random act. This felt personal. It was a digital mugging in broad daylight. For Tsutomu, a man whose life revolved around the integrity of data, this was more than a professional setback. It was a profound, unforgivable insult. His digital fortress, his carefully constructed world, had been utterly compromised. Invaded. Shattered. The quiet academic, the reclusive genius, felt a rage, cold, calculating, begin to simmer. This was no longer just about catching a criminal. This was about vendetta star. The game had changed. Mitnick, basking in his digital anonymity, had unknowingly poked the bear. He had stirred an adversary unlike any he had faced before. Tsutomu Shimomura didn't call the authorities and step aside. He declared war. This became his obsession. Every line of code, every packet of data, every faint digital echo left by Mitnick became a clue in a relentless, unforgiving hunt. He wasn't chasing a ghost, he was pursuing a mirror image, a warped reflection of his own digital prowess, turned toward destruction. Mitnick thought he was untouchable, invisible. But Shimomura had the dedication, the intellect, and now, the personal motivation to prove him wrong. The chase was on. A collision course between two titans of the digital age. One, the phantom who reveled in chaos. The other, the shadow, emerging from the very depths of the internet, determined to bring him down. This wasn't just a pursuit anymore. This was a battle for digital supremacy. A personal, high-stakes duel. And Shimomura would not surrender. As the digital bloodhounds closed in on their elusive prey, the tension in the air was palpable. Shimomura, a master of his craft, meticulously pieced together the fragments of data left behind by Kevin Mitnick, following a trail of breadcrumbs that seemed to lead nowhere and everywhere at once. The collaboration between Shimomura, the FBI, and other experts was a well-oiled machine, each member playing a crucial role in the high-stakes game of cat and mouse. The hunt for Mitnick was not just a technological pursuit but a psychological one as well. The phantom-like figure of Mitnick seemed to taunt his pursuers, always staying one step ahead, leaving behind a trail of destruction in his wake. But Shimomura was determined, his focus unwavering as he delved deeper into the intricate web of Mitnick's digital footprint. Each breakthrough brought them closer to unraveling the mystery of Mitnick's true identity and location. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, the tension reached its peak. Shimomura's relentless pursuit of Mitnick was a testament to the power of technology and human determination. The final showdown was imminent, a battle of wits and wills that would determine the fate of the elusive hacker. And as the digital bloodhounds closed in on their target, the world held its breath, awaiting the dramatic conclusion of this high-stakes chase. For years, Kevin Mitnick had been a ghost in the machine, a digital phantom, slipping through the darkest corners of the nascent internet with an almost supernatural ease. He was the trickster god of cyberspace, taunting authorities, leaving digital breadcrumbs, always one step ahead. But that reign, that era of untouchable dominance, was now hurtling towards a cataclysmic end. The air itself seemed to crackle with an unseen energy, a silent, relentless countdown echoing across fiber optic cables and satellite links. The hunter had become the hunted. Every keystroke Mitnick made, every fleeting connection, every whispered command through a stolen phone line, was no longer a path to freedom, but a thread in the loom of his own capture. The world outside, a world he had so skillfully evaded, was closing in. Not slowly. Not gently. But with the cold, calculated precision of a predator finally cornering its prey. Across the nation, the pieces were rapidly, irrevocably falling into place. In San Diego, Tsutomu Shimomura, driven by a deep sense of personal violation and an unyielding commitment to justice, worked feverishly, his screens alight with the digital footprints Mitnick had carelessly, or perhaps, arrogantly, left behind. Beside him, an elite team of federal agents, the FBI's finest cyber sleuths, moved with synchronized purpose. They weren't just guessing anymore. They had location data. They had timestamps. They had triangulations. Every outgoing call Mitnick made from his purloined cellular phones, every burst of data across a stolen modem, provided another pinpoint on a digital map, a map that was shrinking rapidly, around a single, increasingly inescapable locus. They knew he was in Raleigh, North Carolina. They knew the approximate neighborhood. The game of digital cat and mouse had moved to the physical plane, the virtual pursuit now manifesting as unmarked cars quietly cruising suburban streets, officers with specialized equipment listening intently for the telltale chirps and beeps of a modem connecting, the distinctive signature of Mitnick online. It was February 15, 1995. The pre-dawn chill in Raleigh was palpable, cutting through the silence. Hours bled into minutes. Minutes into agonizing seconds. The stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just another chase, this was the culmination of years of relentless effort, a defining moment in cyber history. Then a signal. A modem connection. A series of familiar commands, traced back to an apartment building. The adrenaline surged. This was it. They had him. The precise address confirmed. As the first pale tendrils of dawn began to paint the sky, a heavily armed FBI tactical team moved into position. There was no more uncertainty. No more guessing games. Just the cold, hard reality of the net closing. Mitnick, oblivious in his digital world, was still typing, still navigating the networks, still believing himself untouchable. But the door, the real-world door, was about to be breached. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic thumping of their hearts, and then a series of sharp, undeniable raps. The game was over. The phantom of the internet, the most elusive hacker in history, was finally, irreparably, cornered. February 15, 1995. The air in Raleigh, North Carolina, was heavy with the silence of pre-dawn, a silence about to be violently shattered. For years, Kevin Mitnick had been a ghost in the machine, a digital phantom taunting law enforcement, a name whispered with awe and fear throughout the nascent internet. But the relentless pursuit of Tsutomu Shimomura and a dedicated team of FBI agents had finally, brought them to the precipice. This wasn't just another lead. This was it. The culmination of a desperate, high-stakes game of cat and mouse played across the wires of the world. The target, an unassuming apartment complex. The mission, apprehend the most wanted computer criminal in American history. Darkness clung to the building, a perfect shroud for the covert operation unfolding. Each agent moved with practiced precision, their breath held, their focus absolute. The legend of Kevin Mitnick was about to collide with cold, hard reality. The digital realm, once his sanctuary, had betrayed him. The hunt was over. The trap was set. Then, the moment. Not a bang, but a sudden, controlled breach. The door to apartment 103 gave way, and the shadows within were instantly filled with determined figures. Kevin Mitnick, stirred from a fitful sleep by the commotion found himself abruptly staring down the barrel of a federal investigation. There was no escape. No back door. No digital firewall to hide behind now. Kevin? A voice, sharp and authoritative, cut through the stunned silence. His eyes, wide with a mixture of disbelief and, perhaps, a terrible, dawning resignation, met theirs. The game, it was over. The phantom had a face. The digital myth, a physical presence. This wasn't a virtual challenge he could hack his way out of. This was reality star. Agents swarmed the small living space, their trained eyes scanning for any sign of resistance, any attempt to flee. But Mitnick, in that moment, seemed to understand. The adrenaline, the years of flight, the constant vigilance, it all seemed to drain out of him in a single, crushing wave. The era of the digital cowboy, free to roam the electronic frontier, was about to come to a screeching, definitive halt. He was caught. Physically caught. The legendary hacker reduced to a man in handcuffs. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Every piece of equipment, his computers, his modems, his carefully crafted tools of the trade, became evidence. The trophies of a life lived on the fringes of legality were meticulously documented, bagged, and tagged. Mitnick himself was processed, interrogated, and formally charged. The shockwaves were instantaneous. Across the internet, in hacker forums, and within law enforcement agencies worldwide, the news spread like wildfire. Kevin Mitnick, the ghost, was captured. It wasn't just an arrest, it was a watershed moment. For some, it was a triumph of justice, a testament to the fact that even the most elusive digital outlaw could be brought to heel. For others, particularly in the underground hacker community, it was a somber, almost tragic end to an era, a stark reminder that even the most brilliant minds could not outrun the real world forever. The legend of Kevin Mitnick would continue to grow, morphing from cautionary tale to folk hero, but his days of unfettered access, of daring digital exploits, were unequivocally, and dramatically, over star. The line had been drawn. The game had ended. And the world of cybersecurity would never, ever be the same. February 15, 1995. The world watched, holding its breath. Kevin Mitnick, the most wanted cybercriminal in history, was finally captured. But his story was far from over. In many ways, it had only just begun. The manhunt, a global spectacle, now gave way to a courtroom drama, an ideological battle that would define a generation. The government, armed with newly crafted cybercrime statutes, sought to make an example. They painted Mitnick as a digital supervillain, a malicious force capable of plunging the world into technological chaos. But the public, they saw something else. They saw a trickster. A rogue genius. And almost immediately, a rallying cry echoed across the nascent internet: "Free Kevin." His trial was protracted, complex, and often absurd. Prosecutors grappled with explaining intangible digital crimes to bewildered juries. The damage, they argued, wasn't just financial, it was to trust, to security itself. Mitnick, denied bail, was held in solitary confinement, accused of being able to whistle-launch a nuclear missile by simply making a phone call, a ludicrous claim that became a darkly humorous symbol of the era's profound misunderstanding of technology. He became a symbol for government overreach, for the clash between digital freedom and state control. His incarceration, lengthy and often harsh, fueled the Free Kevin movement, transforming a lone hacker into an international cause. Activists, coders, and civil libertarians plastered Free Kevin stickers everywhere, defaced government websites, and organized protests. They argued he was being persecuted, not for malicious intent, but for the ability to breach systems. For intellectual curiosity. For proving the system itself was vulnerable. Years later, a transformed Mitnick emerged from prison, bound by parole conditions so draconian they forbade him from touching a computer, even from speaking about his past exploits. But the myth had already taken hold. The man was now forced to confront the legend. What followed was a remarkable evolution. The digital outlaw, once the embodiment of cyber anarchy, became a respected cybersecurity consultant. He turned his profound understanding of human nature, his gift for social engineering, into a powerful tool for good, helping companies and governments understand their vulnerabilities. His story, once a cautionary tale of crime, morphed into a testament to redemption, a living example of how the very skills that could be exploited could also be harnessed for defense. Kevin Mitnick's journey, from the shadowy corners of cyberspace to the forefront of security, didn't just change him star. It fundamentally changed how we perceive hacking, how we develop laws to govern digital spaces, and how we protect ourselves in an increasingly interconnected world. The myth and the man, forever intertwined, left an indelible mark.